another edition of the Better Decisions podcast. I'm not doing this in my Miami studio. I'm actually doing this here in LA with Juliette Hohnen, my business partner. Juliette, thank you so much for doing this. I'm just going to have you introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Juliette Hohnen. I am a real estate agent in Los Angeles. And this is also going to be on my podcast, which is called the Juliette Conversations. So welcome back.
Perfect. So both audiences. This will be really interesting for both the LA and the Miami audience.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people who live all around. They'll have a first home, a second home, a third home.
Yes.
Obviously, with
those lucky people.
Those lucky people, because we're dealing with the luxury end of the market.
Yeah. They're probably thinking, well, who are these? What are these English people doing here in America?
Why am I being sold real estate in America by an English person?
What is this fake accent bullshit?
So
yes.
The reason why I actually came out here to do this, and the reason this is particularly poignant right now, is because there's something pressing that's in the market that a lot of people don't even know about yet. I don't think people are fully aware of the mansion tax, or the proper name for it, which is...
It's called Measure ULA. And we are anticipating, because it's a mansion tax, it's 4% up from 5 to 10 million, and it's 5.5%, 5.5, 10 million and up. And it does cover residential, commercial, everything. So we are anticipating some people getting kind of annoyed with owning here and probably maybe moving to your state where you have much better tax situation.
Yeah, so it's funny because the whole tax situation has always been a conversational piece.
Yeah.
And as somebody...
Because there's no income tax in Miami.
Well, we don't have state. We have, obviously, we pay our income tax when obviously it's not...
Income.
I wish there was no tax in Miami.
No,
it's not in Monaco. But there is what we have state tax.
Right.
And state tax is a thing that, obviously, New York, LA... other desirable states have this tax. We do not.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we have our relative taxes, and I think it's good just, we have our income tax, which obviously is the same across the country. But you'll see we have our property taxes every year, which in my case is about 1.6. Yours is
1.25. So your property taxes are higher than Los Angeles.
It's a smidge more because we don't have any other taxes. So how else do we make money? It's got to come from somewhere.
No state taxes.
Yes. But there's all these other little things that come into play that add up. And obviously, once you're dealing with whether it's not just, your home or your business, there's taxes that come into play. Now, this is a whole new ballgame.
Yes, it's kind of shocking. It's the biggest tax hike in the history of Los Angeles. And it was voted for by everybody, and anyone that voted, and it won. And it goes into effect April 1st. So we've really got the rest of December, January, February, and March to sell anything as much as we can. So there should be really no vacationing real estate agents. It's
an interesting moment because I kind of came in and I was like, how is this going to really play out? And obviously, as we go through the conversation, we're going to talk how people are going to react and accordingly, deal with this and where they're going to go and where they were going to move from and to.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about where the market is, just the economy in general, because it's coming at a right moment.
It's coming at a horrible moment because of the interest rates going up. And I think we're going to go back to seasonal real estate, which is to say, for example, we're in December now, where it's been on pause. I would say ever since July through now, we've had a much, much slower market here in Los Angeles. I mean, we're all still busy, but the deals are more difficult. Yeah. Buyers are sitting on the sideline. They're wondering, are rates going to go down maybe in March of next year? Shall they wait? Days on market are definitely have lengthened, and price per square footage has gone down. So, some people are just going to wait. Buyers, some sellers who have to sell are going to sell, and then we're going to have lower comps. So that pushes the sellers who are now on the market to sell now, because once their homes can't comp, which is what a bank will need, an appraisal, then it's going to be harder for them to sell at those top end of the market prices.
And your top end of the market we come coming into because the tax is being applied at the 5 million and 10 million, and obviously you've already got some pretty expensive real estate. And it's actually been a pleasure. We went out today, we looked at a house in Malibu, it was beautiful. And I look around and obviously I see there's a spread of, you've got a lot. And again, we were talking about how many. I mean, it is a lot of 10 million plus, obviously 5 million plus, but 10 million plus homes throughout all these different neighborhoods, whether it's within LA or some of the surrounding towns to the north and the south. There's a lot of real estate at that level. And one of the things I was curious to know about, and this is the developer conversation.
Yeah.
And we just came from a meeting for a very smart commercial guy who was telling me, Dan was telling me, so here's how I see this playing out. And I want to get your opinion on this. He said, developers right now have come in, and there's a lot of cash that comes into them. They're coming in through a fund. And so these funds are expecting a certain return. Yeah. They're expecting, let's say, 10, 12% return on their investment. And that's what they planned because they were in a long-term 10-year plan.
Right.
They ended up, getting into a process where they've got this plan and they have to hit this to hit their kind of bonus, if you want to call it that. And that 5% just wipes that out.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's halved the profits of the developers. And, if you just look at the way it was worded, some people do their homework and they really, they look at their ballots. And some people, it was so complicatedly worded. And I think if you didn't read it 3 times and you didn't know about it, you would just say, oh, homelessness. We want to fix homelessness. Let's do that. But the reality is it's so all-encompassing in a way that's sort of not fair. So let's talk about business owners. So say you have a warehouse that you bought at, say, 3 million and now it's worth 5.5, and you want to scale up your business and you want to buy something for 6, 7, or maybe just a little bit more, maybe only 400,000 or 500,000 more. You no longer can do that. And by the way, this tax happens whether you are losing money or making money. So people will have to pay this tax even if they're losing money on their properties. So that's another issue. The second issue is, as you were talking about with developers, people who are building condos or to just say to rent. What's going to happen is the developer is going to buy the piece of land. The person who's selling that land is going to add in the 4% or the 5.5%. Then the developer's going to come in. They're going to also add in their percent, and it's all going to be passed down to the renters. So probably a lot of the people who were signing off on this and saying, yes, let's tax the rich, they're also going to be paying, I think, across the board. You and I have been talking about, this means more expensive real estate in Los Angeles.
Rent goes up. And
rent goes up. Housing goes up. And we're already in a terrible inventory situation here. There's nothing to buy. I mean, normally my business is 50-50 buyers and sellers. I've done a lot of listings recently in the last 2 years, but buyers now, I have tons of buyers, can't find anything, even off market, which I do half of my business off market pocket listings. There's not stuff,
available.
No.
And if this continues, builders are going to take a step back and not want to build.
They're going to go somewhere else. And the other thing developers are going to now do is they're going to be a lot more creative. So we're going to see more land leases. We're going to see more profit participation. We're going to see maybe not even properties changing hands. Maybe buyers and sellers will become partners in some way, because that's a way to dodge these taxes.
It seems pretty surprising. And I think that when you look at the ramifications, she's getting serious now, she's taking the jacket off.
Taking it off, baby. Taking it off.
So when you get these developers coming through, and obviously then the rents go up, the returns have to be met. Yeah. It just means that long term, you're going to etch up the cost of real estate within LA. Yeah. So I know that in Miami, for example, went through a boom in the last couple of years. And I used to watch the TV shows and go, that's expensive. Yeah. Oh my God, that house in LA cost 20 million. Now I look at it, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Kind of the same. I mean, but it could jump again. It could suddenly, that chasm could grow, which means the separation between the have and the have-nots, the high-end real estate in LA will jump again. as a result, potentially, of this.
I mean, here's the sad thing, in my opinion, is New York, for example, has a 2% mansion tax. Mm-hmm. So here in Los Angeles, it's now doubled. I just think the thing about LA is it's a land of opportunity. So you have a lot of people coming here trying to make money. They're young actors, they're young filmmakers, they're tech people, whatever. They are not going to be able to afford an apartment, because there's going to be less affordable housing. Now, in theory, this money is going towards homelessness and affordable housing.
That's what it was sold at. That's why everyone kind of ticked the box on it.
But I've been told that there's $1 billion dollar surplus that hasn't been used already, which would be, a sort of more Republican thing, smaller government doesn't really know how to manage the money, that sort of thing. So anyway, they're going to have more money. Let's see what they do with it.
Well, I mean,
let's hope so.
From the receiving side, I mean, you started to mention about how your market is. And I think one of the things the reason we have a partnership is that I think there's a level of professional empathy that we try to have with our clients. And if you can understand their personal situation and the world that they live in, you have a much better much better chance of serving them in the way that they need to be served.
Yeah.
Because their challenges, the push and pulls that they're experiencing, whether buying or selling real estate. So that's why obviously our partnership exists. And it's so powerful and it's tangible right now that both cities have this situation where we're experiencing a similar thing. There is a standoff between buyers and sellers. There is a chasm between what the sellers want and what the buyers are willing to pay.
Yeah.
And that needs to be breached. And there's also a situation, which I think is rather poignant, which is how people cannot afford sometimes to sell their homes. Yeah. And we have it in Miami where they bought at a much lower number. Now the value is much higher. If they sell, they're like, okay, now I'm going to refinance. I'm going to pay higher interest rates on my next purchase. And my taxes are going to go through the roof because I was paying tax on a $1 million home and now I'm paying tax on a $5 million home. So
you can't transfer the tax over 57 there?
There isn't that much portability.
Oh.
It doesn't work. And also, you get those people who then go into retirement and who are maybe on the back nine of their professional careers, so they know they're not going to keep making money in perpetuity for the next 20 years. They're like, okay, I've got 3 or 4 years. I have to be able to afford my tax bill, my whatever bills you've got. And I look at this, like this tax, for example, as other taxes do, hurting a middle ground person.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, that was another thing we said. You know what I wanted to say before about New York being a place, a little island where it's mostly for rich people, like, and that I think this tax is going to make LA much more like that. But the other thing you were saying, what were you saying?
Oh, a lot of stuff. So I was talking about how the separation between the buyers and the sellers, the psychology is there.
Oh, you know what I think? Do you know what I think is going to happen? I think the market is, on average, in America, people move every 5 years, and especially in LA, it's a very transient community. Mm-hmm. People come here, they make it big, they make a lot of money, they buy another house, they trade up. I think people are going to maybe think more about it. Maybe what you'll have is people taking the equity out of their home, getting a big mortgage and maybe having it as a rental instead of paying the taxes. So
the rental market can go up. That was a conversation I had with the commercial broker who said, I expect that the rental market's going to jump. And when that market jumps, then the ROI, the return on investment for a lot of those funds that are coming in who are investors saying that, I'm going to buy a building and rent the units out. If that fund, then obviously that margin increases because the rents go up. Then they're going to be like, okay, now it's okay to invest again. But the value of the asset's gone up. The whole cost of real estate goes up. The whole system moves up several notches. And I think, look, LA is not going anywhere long term. It's going to be around just like New York. All these conversations about, this is catastrophic over here and there. There's migratory movements all the time. As you said, there's a transitional element to LA living.
Yeah.
There's transitional elements with a lot of people. They just look for the next most comfortable place to be.
But even before this tax, for example, I can think of a few actors, including Mark Wahlberg, and a year or two before that, of people who are going to go to places like Vegas, which is, Nevada, close enough. They can spend a certain amount of time here. Maybe they'll rent, but their main home will be there, or maybe they'll have another home somewhere else. I think people are going to do that. And I think maybe developers are going to think about, are there other states, just like in the film business, how it's less expensive to film other places. That's what's going to happen with the housing market.
They did that all over. They did that in Canada, didn't they? They started to build there was a lot of other places that they would start to push and give credits and make it more desirable to film in other cities.
New Orleans, North Carolina, Vancouver. There are all these other places. So, it's interesting because it's breaking down the film industry. Maybe will be less here, but I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of these hedge fund and tech people and people in the gaming industry, they don't necessarily have to be here. So why do they come here? They come here for the sunshine and...
Well, I guess people get also where there's migration of wealth, and where the money moves, people tend to go to as well, because there's opportunity. And you mentioned hedge funds. I mean, I wrote a big piece on you can Google it. You can put hedge funds in Miami. It's the first thing you'll see on Google. And obviously, we had the recipients of the Citadel Group moving. We had Millennium, Bridgewater, all these groups. We've got a big Goldman Sachs office. There's a lot of, obviously, financial migration. And Brickell is already the second biggest financial hub in the US, or has been. Now, today, it's, I don't say it's going to rival New York, but it's definitely moving in that direction. And there's a large amount of migratory wealth that's already come down. Ken Griffin moved his group down to Miami, and that's obviously been all over the press. But when I look at then future developments, it's even more palatable. The next step is, how do we as professionals, and we're here to do a job, we're not politicians, we're not getting into the whole political arena of what that means. It's more about, okay, so let's say you do decide to move. Let's say this is not going to work.
Because this is my question to you is, okay, so my clients say, I'm thinking of going to Miami. Mm-hmm. My question to you is, what are the reasons for my clients to go to Miami versus Texas?
Thank you for asking that question. That was slightly loaded, but thank you. Okay, so this is my chance to really pitch Miami.
Yes.
So Miami over the last couple of years has really drawn people in. And the fundamental reasons is people think, it's because it's taxes, and it's not. The quality of life in Miami is fantastic.
Yeah.
You've been down there, so excellent schools, very, very safe. Very, very clean, very easy to drive around. Weather's great. August and July, a little warm, but the rest of the year, it's fantastic. There's also an enormous amount of entrepreneurial spirit. So somebody asked me, what's Miami like? I said, Miami's kind of like a salad. Mm. It's got a crunch of different cultural bites of everything. It's not melted down. Nothing's blended. It's not like a soup. It's really, there's a big mix of identity, but it's very respected. And it's a bit like Singapore. So it's very vibrant. It's very stimulating. You can go to a dinner party. You'll speak to 10 different people from 10 different countries.
You have dinner parties in Miami?
I've done a few dinner parties. So my wife's run a few, and it is.
But do you get invited to them?
I do get invited to some dinner parties.
Interesting.
And not as many as I'm running around with 2 kids, and so my party scene is very much diminished.
Yeah.
But what is fascinating is that the conversations that we get to have with people is they come in, and everybody that I've moved to Miami in the last couple of years has turned to me and said, I'm not going back.
No.
Its quality of life's exceptional.
I do know a few people who went there and did come back, interestingly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to hear their...
I think they said they questioned that if there was as much going on and culture. That was the question. What's your answer to that?
So I guess it depends what you're interested in. I mean, look, I think culturally speaking, it's not like, what a cultural experience going out like a New York or a London. It is still finding its footing. But there's a huge social calendar. So we just had Art Basel.
Yeah.
We have...
That's
which is the whole
fun.
Art Miami Fair, which is always fun. There's Formula One. There's the boat show. There's the food festival. Are people running out to the ballet and the opera every weekend? No, they're not. It's
I don't think they are
life.
in LA, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my thing. So
there's a good nightlife, or there used to be back in the day.
But I think culture exists from a perspective of the culture that you create in terms of community and people around you. And I think like with every city, it depends who you meet.
Yeah.
You can go into LA and meet the wrong crowd and say, I had a horrible experience, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You might come in and meet a fantastic group of people and absolutely love it. It all depends on who you mix with. And it also depends on where you live. Because the thing about where you live, and this is a perfect segue.
I know, but I do want to talk about the areas, and I do want to ask you. But the other thing I was interested in Los Angeles, in Miami, is it has... I know a lot of people from England love to go to Miami, and a lot of people from New York will come to Miami in the winter.
Not so much. UK, honestly, it's not like LA. We don't have the same. I still like to be the unicorn.
Yeah.
Which is nice because the accent fits well. And if there was a bunch of British people running around selling real estate, it would be a lot harder for me to compete.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of New Yorkers. Yes, there's a lot of people from Connecticut.
Because they come in the winter because it's too cold.
Well, they used to come in the winter, and then they were like 3 months, and then obviously COVID, it was like maybe 6. And then, and let's just move now. But I think that there was a big movement in terms of and again, I want to be political, but there was a big movement when people said, for whatever reason, I'm not here to judge, they weren't happy with how things were being run in their home state. They didn't like how money was being spent. They felt that they were spending a lot and not getting enough in return. And it's okay if you're highly taxed, if you feel like you get your money's worth. But a lot of people felt that they weren't. And then they came down, and then they felt there was a certain amount there was a dictatorial force that was at play. And when they started to feel it in the schools, where they would say to me, I want education, not indoctrination.
Oh, yeah.
And that really was like, you'll put up with a lot, but if you find that your kids are being taught in a way that you don't agree with, then there's a backlash. And then obviously policies over crime and other things like that, policing, that led to a lot of people saying, you know what, I'm not feeling as safe as I used to. And that obviously gets exacerbated during COVID and other situations. But I definitely feel like New Yorkers, Connecticut, Long Island, New Jersey, DC, Chicago.
Yeah. All the cold states.
California, cold states.
Yeah.
They've come in.
So that's where the bulk of people nationally
are
coming from.
That's where the bulk of people is. And the problem that we have is that we don't have a lot of people leaving.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a freeway. Lots of people coming on the freeway. No one's leaving at an exit.
Well, the prices have gone up, but what by 37% over COVID?
So they went up. The house market went up 56%.
That's a lot. Within
the luxury sector that I'm dealing with, and 40, according to my statistics. And again, it wasn't the whole market. And that's why I think it's really important that when you watch something like this and people are watching and listening in, or they're hearing this message, is that we're not. I don't sell stuff at $500,000, the lower end of the market, or 300,000 or 200,000. We're talking about the luxury end of the sector.
Yeah.
And it absolutely was, it went through the roof. And now that's why it's now more neck and neck with the LA prices. Houses up 56%, condos up like 42%. And obviously we've had a cyclical nature in the past, so we've relied on the South American market enormously. We still have buyers now coming in. That's our next wave of buyers coming through. But the New York market, the California market, was a whole new animal for us.
Yeah.
But they did move in. And by and large, I felt like they have stayed. But the prices have gone up exponentially, and it's making it challenging.
And your rental market also went up, because I know I sent you a couple of sellers, or buyers actually.
Buyers.
And they wanted to get out of the LA market. Mm-hmm. They were trying to decide, they wanted to buy rentals. They had them here, and I introduced them to you, and I said, I think you should really think about buying in Miami.
Yeah.
And they're getting a much better rate of return.
Well, the funny thing about the return that we've seen in the Miami investment market and the rental market, and this again for developers and people who are thinking about, okay, maybe I might look at the opportunities of Miami. I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
So there's my point. Well, I have my opinion like everyone else, but I say don't take my word for it. Just look at the numbers. And again, I have all these stats and sheets and softwares that you can kind of play with and understand. But I really look at those figures, and what it tells me is this. the rental market has gone up enormously. And in terms of 20, 30, 40%, whatever it's moved to. And of course it varies depending on the neighborhood that you're in. But the reason why it happened is almost more interesting than the amount, because it leans into the sustainability of that increased rental market at the moment. We have a lot of people moving in. So obviously we talked about the hedge fund crowd, or Citadel are moving 350 families to South Florida into Miami area. That sounds like, oh, it's not that many. It's a lot when you're looking at the stratosphere that they're buying and the inventory. And not everyone immediately moves to a city, as you know, and says, I'm just going to buy a house.
No, they rent first.
Yeah, you want to acclimate.
Yeah.
You don't know where you want to live. You like the city, but you don't know if you want to be in Coconut Grove or Coral Gables or Brickell or Miami Beach. So
the same is happening in Austin, and people are buying rental houses there because people are moving there, renting, and then figuring out where they want to buy.
The figures go up a lot, and it's easier to do. It's easier to see that happen when you look at what the way it's put together. So the company will help with the relocation, so they'll absorb some of that cost. So they personally wouldn't say, I'm not going to spend $30,000 a month on rent, but when the company's involved, it's kind of managed so that, yes, it actually does make sense to do that. Long term, they want to get into the housing market because they realize that things will get away from them. So they're also waiting for the right home. And just like LA, what do people love the most at the luxury end of the market? New houses, brand new construction. And it's 3 years to build a house in Miami, which I thought was a long time. You told me some of the numbers.
Oh, well, I mean, in Malibu's 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, that's my by the time my kids are through school, now I don't need the house.
No, exactly.
So from that angle. But when we look at that, it's interesting to get into the neighborhood conversation.
Yes, so let's get back to that. So I've got one of the neighborhoods that's really gone off the charts in Los Angeles is the Palisades.
Well, let's play a game.
Okay,
because I think this is fun.
All right.
Because while we're here, we might as well do
love
something
playing
which
games.
is a little
Let's
bit.
Play games.
So you're gonna fire me a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then
because I don't know Miami at all.
You know it a little bit. You do know it.
I want to know about the Arts District. The
Wynwood Arts District.
Yeah, is that downtown?
Yeah, it's just a little north of downtown, but
No, but is that like our downtown, LA's downtown?
That's interesting. I can describe a neighborhood. So if I describe the Arts District, I would say obviously galleries, cool shops, very cool restaurants. The cantina trucks that are parked that
sounds
everyone
like
goes
Venice.
to. It's a little bit, but it's not really residential. There's not a lot of residential around there. It's more commercial.
That's what I'm saying. Downtown.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your answer. You got downtown and like Wynwood.
Yeah.
And
it's quite far away from the beach, isn't it?
It's Miami's a lot more compact than LA. So it relatively speaking, it's on the mainland.
All right, so I'm going to throw one to you. Let's go Silver Lake. Silver Lake is super hip. Everyone wears black. That's a bit of a generalization.
You don't do that in Miami. There are no neighborhoods where everyone's wearing black.
And that's why I will never live in Miami.
Yeah, see? Black's very slimming and everyone loves it. So.
No, but can you think of the equivalent neighborhood to Silver Lake? It's more young, upcoming,
I would say the outskirts of Brickell. So outskirts of Brickell is probably like Shenandoah, the roads. This is the people who can't afford to live in, like the equivalent of Venice would be Coconut Grove.
Okay.
Very artsy, but it's not cheap either.
So to me, Los Angeles, people start on the east side when they move here, and then they end up on the west side because the west side probably has more schools and it's closer to the beach. We
go from the north to the south. You start in the north,
so where's
and then you
the
make
beach?
money and you move south.
Where's the beach?
So the map of Miami, and we'll flash this up on a screen for those who don't know. So here's a geography lesson.
Yeah.
You have the mainland and you have the beach, and they're connected by a series of causeways, 195, 395, and then the Venetian Islands, which is the connecting man-made islands that connects you from where is I guess the downtown, just beyond downtown area. Running you into Sunset the Sunset neighborhood area, which is where people think of like Lincoln Road. It kind of runs in that direction. So those are the connecting bridges. And then further up, we have more bridges. But that's the kind of the divide, the beach and the mainland. The beach is where you come to party. So when people think of Miami and they go, it's the beach. I know Miami. Where did you stay? South Beach. Well, you don't know Miami. You know South Beach. That's not the same thing. It's a tourist area. It's like going to an island and staying in the full service resort and say you know the country.
South Beach doesn't go all the way up to Soho House, does it?
Yeah. So
that is it.
It's the beach. So you've got south of Fifth. You've got South Beach. You've got Mid Beach, which is where Soho House is. Then you get into like North Beach. Then you get into Bal Harbour, Surfside, Sunny Isles, Golden Beach, all the way up to like Palm Beach. That's basically the one big strip. It's Collins. Like drive straight up Collins. It's like your Pacific Coast Highway. I know it's not a highway, but it's the main street that runs along the ocean. That's probably the easiest way to think of it. And then obviously it's all condos. I mean, there's condos on one side, on the beach side, and on the other side, you've obviously got a series of islands with houses. Now, the best schools are in the south. Because you asked the original question, like, where do I find the schools? So when I look at, like, Venice, I think of Coconut Grove because it's hipsterish, it's kind of cool, it's got a bit of edge to it. Yeah. But it's also kind of got expensive as well. It's not, there are relatively expensive parts of Coconut Grove, but not anywhere near once you get into, say, the south side of Gables or into Ponce Davis. That's when it gets much more expensive. That is where Ponce Davis is like Pacific Palisades, which is families, wealthy families who want slightly bigger yards and slightly more separation.
What prices are the homes there?
So Ponce Davis entry level is probably around 6 million, 7 million, and it'll go up to 15 to 20 million. And that's dry lot.
And who lives there?
Wealthy families with kids.
Yeah.
So I would say, you've got a lot of the guys who are in the finance crowd.
Yeah.
The finance crowd. Some wealthy guys in medical. You'll get wealthy attorneys. You'll get just entrepreneurs who have their own businesses. A smattering of real estate brokers.
Yeah. For example.
For example, there's a bunch of actually. It's funny. You always say drive around and I'll be like that house. That's all owned by agents.
Yeah.
And they're like, those are nice houses. I'm like, well, if you sell real estate, you get to choose a nice house. So then all those houses, and when you look at the best private schools, it's Ransom, Carrollton, Gulliver, Palmer, Trinity, they're all in the south. But they're all 15 to 20 minutes from any one single point. So your neighborhoods, the best schools for you guys...
Yeah, they're Santa Monica, Palisades, Brentwood. I mean, but then we have some really good schools in the valley too. So you don't necessarily have to live on the west side. Some people think you do, but you really don't. Okay, now here's a question for you. Climate change. Last time I went to Art Basel, I think it was flooding and I had water up to my knees.
So,
are you sinking?
Are we sinking? Not right now. I think the honest conversation to have, and again, the reason we have this conversation is because we're not, this isn't a TV show. We're sitting in LA, we're on, Sunset, and I know we could use a cliche.
My new best friend.
And we could be talking about, the whole real estate phenomenon of how things appear to be or are sold to be and how they really are. This is a real conversation. So I'll answer it in a very honest way.
Yes.
Climate change is real.
Yeah.
Anyone who says it isn't is got their head in the sand. The real ramifications of it are more widespread than just, I might have some damage in my house. And if you've been through a hurricane or if you understood it, it's no joke. I know that Miami spent a lot of money to improve things. I think there are parts of it, and I think it's very important to be aware of the flood zone areas within Miami. Now, when you go into very heavily built up areas where there's a lot of concrete, water has a problem from getting out of there. It becomes like a containment tub. And so obviously water fills up and obviously you get flooding. And if you're in a situation that you're in a street, that you are in a part of town where there's a lot of buildings around and there's a lot of concrete and streets, then absolutely. And that obviously low levels, you have to be conscious of that. They're obviously building houses under new codes. And this is one of the things to be aware of.
Yeah.
The impact of it is far-reaching. The immediate impact of it right now is the insurance. And I ran an entire podcast on the effects of insurance. I do not believe that Miami is going to sink into the ocean and disappear. It's not going to go. But there will be areas of Miami that are more prone to flooding and will continuously be more prone to flooding. And there is real estate that will be more affected.
And are those being sold cheaply? For example, Nantucket, which is an island that I visited for the first time this summer and fell madly in love with. There's an area of it that they know is sinking. So those properties are selling.
There are areas, plural, in Miami where if you have an older home, and I don't know that the sinking thing it's not really it's more flooding. Issue. It's flooding, yeah. It's the rising waters as it comes through in a storm, and the dissipation of that water for it to go back out into the bay. If water comes in, it gets trapped. You know, when we had Irma, everyone would call me. Like, all the guys all around the country would be like, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you need like a paddle or something, or a canoe?"
Funny.
I'm like, "No, I'm fine, thanks." Yeah. There are areas where you will see a video come out on like Brickell, and there's some guy in a canoe smiling away, going down Brickell, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." At the same time, 1.5 miles away in Coconut Grove or Coral Gables, it's dry as a bone. There's like no sign that there's any kind of flooding or any kind of problem whatsoever, because you have to understand the topography and how it's built, how it's put together, and you know where the rock is. There are elevated areas and there are lower areas, and if you go into an area where it's like 5 feet above sea level, or you're at the end of a street of a canal where it's low, you're going to get affected.
I mean, I think the thing that you could compare it to here is fire insurance. And
well, it all plays in. The fires in the California wildfires, it all comes down to the insurance premiums.
I know, and some of these houses, the premiums are $100,000 a year. That is substantial.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For example, my house used to be $16,000. It's now $36,000 a month to insure it.
36,000 a year, you mean?
Sorry, a year.
I was like, wow, that's
expensive. No, a year.
Change your carrier.
Yeah, but I mean, still, that's a lot.
36,000 for insurance?
Yeah.
See, I didn't even imagine that you had the whole insurance thing, but
well, of course. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm realizing now. I feel really stupid on camera.
Oh no, I didn't mean to make you feel.
No, it's quite all right. I deserve it. This is good because this is the evolution of the conversation. This is what this is about: helping people make better decisions.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have very high premiums on your flooding.
Well, yeah,
and hurricanes.
It depends. Yeah, so if you have a brand new construction, and if you have hurricane-proof windows, and everything is built, and it's actually raised up, so when you build a home under the new code. And code is very important to understand in any city. Yeah. When you build under the new code, your insurance is significantly lower. And I'm talking about next year. You're talking about it could be 1/3 of what it would be for an older home. 1/3.
Oh, that's interesting. But and I don't know if it really works like that here. I have a friend who bought a fabulous house in Topanga, and I was a little worried, but it was a built fire retardant, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think her premium went down.
Yeah, how fire retardant is it? I mean, it's
serious. It's serious.
Really?
It is.
Fascinating to know how you build that.
Then, I had some other clients who sold in Topanga. They lived there for a long time because they would keep being evacuated. And they were just sick of it.
I think that wherever you are, one of the things that...
There's always a problem.
There's always a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things people need to do is understand that a a person who may not be as educated as you, or I would like to say as educated as me, but I don't want to, assume anything. There's a moment in time, especially right now with people talking about the word recession. I'm just going to say it because, it's okay. You can say the word. No one's going to freak out and run off into the trees. Yeah. But I think you need to take stock of where you are. And I think there's a time when you should be auditing your existing real estate situation. Yeah. Taking a look at what you're spending, what your carry costs are, what your future plans are. Yeah. Because reacting when things are too late, or when your back's up against the wall, or when things get kind of nasty and everyone starts to react, kind of like the stock market. If you do that, then you become a reactive animal. And being in life in general, in business, being proactive is much better than being reactive.
Yeah.
You know, the people who...
Thinking ahead.
And so sitting down with us and having this conversation about, you know, what my house is going to cost me, what it's going to cost me when I sell it, what it's going to cost me when I rebuy, what my premiums are going to cost on insurance, what my taxes are going to cost me. These are all things that you really need to pay attention to. And it seems a lot of people don't. They just deal with it when they say, oh, maybe I should move now.
Yeah.
No, deal with it before.
Yeah.
Have the conversation before. Or I don't say move, but at least have the conversation.
Okay, so here's my question for you, read the market.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's predicting we're in a recession. We're going into a recession. Some people think that around June 2023 will be at the bottom of the market.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've heard that.
What are your thoughts for the next year?
So this is the thing I notice about the news.
Yeah.
It's very polarizing. I think you can all agree that when you go and you look at a newspaper and a magazine, that the editor who obviously passes that article to go through does not say to his journalist, yeah, write me something kind of middle of the road.
Right.
No, they want extreme. And I think the thing to remember is that, yes, there are some recession environments that are going to be most effective and people are going to really feel it. But I think generalizing about a whole economy and where everyone's going to feel is nonsensical.
No, look,
but I do feel that, I mean, generally,
yeah.
Yes, psychology is going en masse is going to be more negative going into 2023.
Yeah.
But I think you need to understand the specifics of that niche market. And I'll give you an example, if I may, really, really quickly.
Yeah. Because I wanted to say that my view on it is we're going to be in a good market in the beginning of the year. I think we're going to have more inventory, which means more opportunities for buyers, and we're going to, hopefully these interest rates will go down a bit. I'm not suggesting the end of the year is going to be amazing, because I think we're now into seasonal real estate.
Yeah. But think of it like this, like the whole tax thing is going to hit in April. So wouldn't it make more sense if you're a builder to get your house onto the market sooner rather than later? Shouldn't you be calling Juliette to bring your nearly brand new construction that's 2 months away or 3 months or 4 months or 5 months away from being finished and get that damn house into the market to sell now? Because that 5.5% is going to be a real punch.
I wonder how many developers will be working double time. I'm sure a lot will. And I wonder how many people who don't hit that April 1st date will rent their properties. That'll be another interesting thing.
Yeah. And again, how much they're going to rent it for and what the ramifications are with that. But when we get into those new houses, I bought a house as a shell, and I say to everybody in Miami, and I have an entire video dedicated on like the best variable way to get the home that you want is to do the home that's nearly finished and then put your final finishing touches on. Rather than go through 4 or 5 years of building a home, or 3.5 years or whatever it is, get the house a few months before it's done, maybe do some final tweaks on it. And there's going to be a margin call between the developer and you, the buyer, so you can get a better deal. Because he's going to want to sell, and maybe you can work out a middle ground. There seems to be a common interest in that instance, does it not, for a developer and a seller?
Yeah, definitely.
A buyer, sorry, to do a deal.
The other thing that's interesting that I'd like to talk to you about is new development and condos in both of our states, or cities, I should say, really. You know, in the last few years, there's been a lot more new development here in Los Angeles with the Addition and the beautiful building on Beverly, the Four Seasons. These are super high-end, very expensive condos. Some of them are small as well. The big ones are really expensive.
What's expensive?
So let's talk about the one at 8899 Beverly, for example, which actually has some affordable housing. It's very close to Cedars-Sinai. I wonder who's getting on those lists. But they have a penthouse, and I think they're about 18 million. Absolutely stunning.
What does 18 million get you?
I wish I had the information in front of me, but maybe we can put it down at the bottom.
Well,
somewhere.
You know what we'll do is we'll add this in and we'll give some details. In fact, DM, you should actually ask Juliette directly.
And I will find out.
Info at the bottom of the screen.
But I'm not the selling agent there. But I mean, their penthouses are stunning, and I mean they're gorgeous. But I wonder, that building is only 30% sold. They've got to be they're probably upping the commissions. They need to sell those those properties before April 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the motivations again, that the actual where the money comes from, because some of these developers are getting their money from funds, and those funds they expect a return. So I don't know the variables with this developer, but
what about condos in Miami? Are they still a good investment? Are they a good investment? I always think, personally, I tell people to buy houses because I think they go up. They're a better investment.
It depends. I think, honestly, I used to have the same belief structure, which was like, people who buy houses are single families who have kids. They're more stable. They're not transient. They're not buying it for investments. There is product in Miami that, if you look at, is very kind of...
Oh, we've got 5 minutes? 10 minutes.
Perfect, 10 minutes. Let's get this done. So
shorten this up.
So I just got the thumbs up. So there is I think generic product gets hammered. Condo generic product in a long-term cycle or even a medium-term cycle gets absolutely nailed. Yeah. And I hate it, and I never tell my clients to buy it because I've seen in 2008 I saw the crash there. 2015, I wrote a report, the 2015 investors, or the guide to Brickell downtown, and I said to everyone, get out now, because there's going to be a correction. There's a ton of mid-range, generic, middle-of-the-road product that's same but different, in thousands of them, and you're going to see this pre-spike where everyone was making great rents, where a supply and demand, way too much then product followed, and then the prices corrected, and everyone, prices dropped. And then in 2020, when COVID happened, nobody wanted to be stuck in an elevator or locked in a big giant box with 350 other families with COVID running rampant. It corrected then. I still, and say again, that mid-range product will get hammered. Yeah. However, this is the big however. When we look at our luxury end of our market, when you look at the Four Seasons, so we have a Four Seasons in Miami, on the beach, in the Surfside area. Yeah. And we've had two. It's
very, very popular.
So popular, in fact, that the last couple of sales were hitting over $6,000 a square foot. We've had a penthouse happen in a new building. I can't say the name because I was told that if I said anyone, they'd cut my feet off. Oh. $7,500 a square foot. Wow. Even Sunny Isles, which is just a kind of more of a beach second home market, they had a penthouse that just sold in a new project at $6,000 a square foot. There's definitely a change of behavior and a change of appetite, and I think that's come from the product has actually changed. We're talking about big units, 4,500 square foot, 5,000 square foot, combined units.
They tend to be a lot smaller, I think, in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a 3-bedroom is hard to find. I think maybe because these are more second homes here, like at the Addition. They're not big apartments, even the penthouses.
But I think there's an opportunity there. I think if you're a developer in LA, given the appetite of what we've seen in Miami, and I've studied this 7 Ways from Sunday, I have the software Condo Geeks, and we've analyzed this for 15 years. Bigger units are what people want.
Definitely.
And I can't imagine they don't want it just because it's LA.
I agree.
And I think probably that's what the direction they'll go once the dust has settled with this, tax situation, and the rent numbers go up. There's going to be a big movement towards that, because not everybody wants to be in a house. It's not for everybody, but especially if it's a second home.
I do think, and I'm interested to sort of see what happens over the next year or two here in LA. We do need more affordable housing. We really do. For young people who are trying to move out of their homes, it's kind of ridiculous. And what you can buy for $1 million in LA it's really tragic.
It's the same in Miami.
First time buyers, it's horrible. So they have to go way out of town.
Yeah, I was going to say, so how do people, and again, it's the same thing with Miami, how do people deal with that situation? Because you start to look at how it affects the social dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, you get pockets of great wealth, and then you have pockets of poverty around you, and so that obviously that friction gets created. There's no other way to describe it. But I think regardless of all of this, the takeaway is there is things changing. The market's moving. We are staying ahead of this. Not many people are having this conversation. I mean, I've realized this, that we've been kind of watching this, but you go out online and you might be watching this because you saw this on YouTube or you saw this on Google, and it was the one thing that you saw that actually really talked about this with real narrative.
Yeah. I mean, I was shocked. I thought, oh, I'll look on YouTube to see what there is on Measure ULA. I was like, there was nothing.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And that was, I think, part of the problem. It was kind of like Brexit. People voted for Brexit without really knowing what they were voting and knowing what the effects were going to be.
Well, I think we're going to see change, that's for sure. I think with change and we all know that with market movements, there's opportunity. There's money made. There's more money made in a downturning market than there is an upswing market.
But by whom?
Those people who are holding cash, those people who are not following the herd, because by virtue of following the herd, you're going to be, diluting the opportunity and the profitability of anything. You need to be the exception, not the rule. And I think that there are opportunities in both states, in both cities, but it's hyper granular. And this is the beauty of this conversation, because coming here, it's about understanding LA in a more granular level. And our dialogue allows us to have more conversations about real estate in general between Miami and LA at a more granular level, so that we can take someone from each position and move them in the most seamless, comfortable, financially and socially and culturally and emotionally way possible that suits them as best.
Well, why I like working with you is you are a numbers person, and my clients tend to be business people who really are interested in the numbers. You know so much, and you work everywhere, which is what I do here.
Yeah.
I think you probably provide white glove service like I do.
100%.
And if you don't do that, you're not going to be succeeding in this market. What I also find interesting is how many agents are now licensed in Miami, New York, and LA. And I personally think, look, it's hard enough to keep on top of the inventory across Los Angeles. Yeah. How are you going to do it in Miami as well as New York, as well as LA?
It's impossible you've got to have partners. This is why this is beautiful, because hyperlocal knowledge only comes from when you are in the area that you're working. It's why I started writing reports, because it was written by people who didn't live in the city. They didn't even sell real estate, so that the report results didn't make any sense. You know your neighborhoods. I've been around with you, and it's incredible the level of detail that you understand, the street by street, area by area behavior, and the people who live there and why they're living there, and all these different subtle variables of who bought what house and who sold what house and why they sold it and where they're going next. And these things matter.
Well, it's knowledge. It is the knowledge. And, when I am referred someone from New York or Miami or whatever, or from London, Australia, I have to explain to them, okay, what are you looking for? Because they have no idea. And I'm sure you're exactly the same in Miami.
I felt it when I got to LA. I was like, I turned me around in three times. I had no idea where I could be walking off into the ocean. It's very confusing.
Yeah. And
it
so
really
people have to
try
and understand where they want to live, and they don't understand they buy here, and they don't understand they will be sitting in an hour of traffic if their kids go to this school versus this school every day, each way.
Explain the priorities.
Exactly.
Explain what people need and address those issues first, so you can tick the boxes, and then you can get into the more the lighter stuff.
Exactly.
But
any last thoughts?
No, I think my takeaway from this is, if you're in a position and you are, a developer looking to sell your house in LA and do it quickly, call Juliette. If you are a family who's looking to move to Miami or you want to explore how that will be and where to go, call me. Or call Juliette first and talk to her about your home in LA, and you've got to sell that.
Yes.
And what neighborhood you're in. Then we can have we even do a conference call. That's what Zoom is for.
Yeah.
The beautiful art of Zoom. And we will be able to help you move you into a neighborhood that fits your needs and wants.
Or you may be somebody who has a home in Miami but lives here, but now wants to move there more long term. And then the other great thing about you, David, is you're great with investments. So if I have a client who maybe bought something that they just moved to, but they want something else now, or they want something that'll go up, you will find that for them.
Well, diversification of portfolio is important. And right now, with a frothy stock market and things going on, you've got to mobilize your cash. Look, the long term, the bonds right now, the monthly bonds that people are doing, they're just not giving a good return. It's treading water.
Right.
It's not a fun place to be. But for more information, as always, see our information below. Juliette, thank you for doing this. Thank you for inviting me to do this podcast. This is super cool and a lot of fun. As always, thank you. And stay tuned for another edition of the David Siddons podcast and
the Juliette Conversations.
Thank you.